On May 14th, 2008, at approximately 2:30 a.m., 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was on the phone with his father, trying to guide him to where his car had gone off the road in rural Minnesota. Brandon had been on the phone with his parents for 47 minutes. He was walking toward what he thought were the lights of the town of Lind, trying to meet his father halfway. Then, suddenly, Brandon said one word, "Oh shit," and the line went dead. Brandon's father immediately called back. No answer. He called again and again. Nothing. Brandon Swanson vanished in the middle of a phone call with his father. He was never seen or heard from again. For over 16 years, despite massive searches covering hundreds of square miles, despite search dogs, helicopters, volunteers, and investigators, not a single trace of Brandon has ever been found. No body, no clothing, no phone, no evidence, nothing. How does a 19-year-old college student vanish in the middle of a flat, open field while talking on the phone? Where did he go? What did he see that made him say, "Oh shit"? This is the Brandon Swanson case, one of the most baffling and frustrating disappearances in American history. This is Untold Cold Cases Files. The Brandon Swanson case is unique because we know exactly when he disappeared, down to the second. We have a 47-minute phone call documenting his movements. We have his father driving around trying to find him. We have multiple witnesses who heard him speak right before he vanished. And yet, despite all of this information, Brandon Swanson disappeared so completely that 16 years of searching has found absolutely nothing. This case has everything: a mysterious late-night drive, a car in a ditch, a desperate phone call, the chilling final words, "Oh shit," massive search efforts, theories ranging from accident to foul play to something even stranger, and a family that has never stopped searching. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Swanson family. Brian, Annette, and the entire family who has dedicated 16 years to finding Brandon. Their advocacy led to Brandon's Law in Minnesota, which changed how missing persons cases are handled. If you have any information about Brandon Swanson's disappearance, please contact the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension or the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Now, let's go back to May 2008 to a 19-year-old college student who was driving home from a party and never made it. Before we dive into Brandon's story, I need you to understand something critical. This case can still be solved. Brandon disappeared in rural farmland. That means his remains, his phone, or evidence could still be out there, waiting to be discovered. Here's what I need you to do right now. First, subscribe to Untold Cold Cases Files immediately. Every subscriber helps us reach more people. More reach means more eyes on cases like Brandon's. More eyes mean better chances that someone who is in that area, someone who saw something, someone who knows something will finally come forward. Hit that subscribe button right now. Second, like this video before we continue. When this video gets enough likes, YouTube pushes it to people in Minnesota, people interested in missing persons cases, people who might have been in that area in 2008. You're like to get this in front of the exact person who has information. Click that like button. Third, commit to sharing this video. Brandon disappeared in Minnesota, but you don't have to be from Minnesota to help. Someone you know might have connections to that area. Someone in your network might have family who were there. Someone you share this with might be the link to solving this case. Share on every platform you have. Brandon Swanson's family has been searching for 16 years. Let's help them find answers. Okay, let's get into Brandon's story. Brandon Victor Swanson was born on January 30th, 1989, in Marshall, Minnesota. He grew up in a loving, stable family in rural Minnesota. Early life. Brandon was the son of Brian and Annette Swanson. He grew up in Marshall, a small town in southwestern Minnesota. The Swanson family was close-knit and supportive, hardworking and middle class, active in their community, typical of rural Minnesota families. Those who knew Brandon described him as friendly and outgoing, responsible and mature for his age. Athletic, he enjoyed sports. Social, he had a good group of friends. Close to his family, especially his parents. A typical, normal teenager/young adult. Brandon was not someone who made reckless decisions. He was not someone who would disappear without telling anyone. He was responsible and reliable. Physical description: height, 5 feet 6 inches. Weight, around 120 to 130 pounds. Hair brown. Eyes, hazel. Build, slender. Distinguishing features: wore glasses, had a small scar on his left hand. By May 2008, Brandon was 19 years old and had successfully completed his first year of college. He was a student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, Minnesota. He was doing well in school. He still lived at home with his parents in Marshall. He had a girlfriend. He had a close group of friends from high school and college. He was working part-time. He had his whole life ahead of him. Tuesday, May 13th, 2008, started as a completely normal day for Brandon. During the day, Brandon attended his classes at Minnesota West. It was near the end of the semester. Finals were approaching. He was in good spirits. Everything was normal. Evening plans. Brandon planned to attend an end-of-year celebration party with friends. The party was in Lind, Minnesota, a small town about 10 miles from Marshall. It was a casual party, friends celebrating the end of the school year. Brandon told his parents he'd be going to the party and would be home later that night. To understand this case, you need to understand the geography of the area. Southwestern Minnesota, very rural, agricultural area. Flat farmland, fields of corn and soybeans. Small towns separated by miles of farmland. Long, straight roads through fields. Very few lights at night. Pitch black in rural areas. Easy to get disoriented at night. The towns: Marshall, where Brandon lived with his parents, population 13,000. Canby, where Brandon attended college, population 1,800. Lind, where the party was population 450. These towns are connected by rural highways and county roads. The roads: mostly straight, gravel or paved roads through farmland. Very few landmarks. Roads look identical, especially at night. Easy to take a wrong turn and not realize it. Brandon was driving his 1998 green Chevy Lumina. An older car, but functional. Nothing fancy, but it got him around. The car was in decent condition. Brandon went to the party in Lind. He was with friends. It was a casual, social gathering. There was drinking. Brandon was 19, underage, but this was a private party. Brandon had been drinking, though reports vary on how much. He stayed at the party for several hours. Everything was normal, just young people celebrating the end of the school year. Around midnight or shortly after, Brandon decided to head home. He said goodbye to his friends. He got in his car. He planned to drive back to Marshall, about 10 miles away. It should have been a simple, short drive. He'd driven these roads many times before. Brandon left the party alone in his car. He was headed home. It was a drive he'd made countless times. It should have been routine. But Brandon Swanson would never make it home. And what happened in the next few hours would create one of the most puzzling mysteries in American missing persons cases. Let's reconstruct the night of May 13th into the early morning of May 14th, 2008, as carefully as possible using phone records, witness statements, and the investigation. Brandon left the party in Lind around midnight or shortly after. He got in a Chevy Lumina and headed toward Marshall to go home. The route from Lind to Marshall is about 10 miles, normally a 15 to 20-minute drive. The route involves county roads and highways through farmland. At night, it's very dark. No streetlights on most of the route. Brandon's condition: Brandon had been drinking at the party. Later investigation would try to determine his level of intoxication. Friends said he seemed okay to drive, though obviously judgment can be impaired. He wasn't stumbling drunk, but he'd been drinking. Brandon was driving through the rural roads, heading toward Marshall. The roads at night in this area are very dark, minimal lighting, flat and straight for the most part, but with many intersections and turnoffs. All the roads look similar, very easy to get turned around, especially at night. At some point around 1 a.m., exact time is uncertain, Brandon's car went into a ditch. What happened? Brandon was driving on what he thought was the road to Marshall. For some reason, wrong turn, momentary inattention, avoiding something, his car went off the road. The car ended up in a ditch. The ditch. Not a deep ditch, but deep enough that the car was stuck. The car's wheels were off the ground. Brandon couldn't drive out. The car was not damaged badly, no major crash, but it was immobilized. Brandon's immediate response. Brandon tried to get the car out. He couldn't. He was stuck on a rural road in the middle of the night. He was in a ditch, but not injured. He needed help. Brandon was now stuck in a ditch in rural Minnesota at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was dark, pitch black, except for maybe moonlight. He was on a rural road with no houses immediately visible. He had his cell phone. He could call for help. Why not call 911? Brandon may have thought this wasn't an emergency. He wasn't hurt, just stuck. He may have wanted to avoid involving police because he'd been drinking. He decided to call his parents instead. At 1:54 a.m., Brandon called his parents at home in Marshall. The call, Brandon's father, Brian Swanson, answered the phone. Brandon, Dad, I'm stuck in a ditch. Can you come get me? Brian, where are you? Brandon, I'm between Lind and Marshall, I think. I went off the road. Brian, are you okay? Brandon, yeah, I'm fine. The car's stuck. I can't get it out. The plan? Brian agreed to come help Brandon. Brandon needed to tell Brian exactly where he was. But this is where the problem started. Brandon didn't know exactly where he was. What happened next was a 47-minute phone call between Brandon and his father that would become the most documented and frustrating part of this case. The problem, Brandon didn't know where he was. Brandon thought he knew where he was, but he was wrong. Brandon's belief. Brandon told his father he was near Lind, on the road toward Marshall. He said he was close to Lind. He could see the lights of the town. He thought he was on a specific stretch of road. The reality. Brandon was not where he thought he was. He was actually about 25 miles away from where he thought he was. He was nowhere near Lind. How could Brandon be so wrong about his location? This is critical to understanding the case. The rural Minnesota roads. In southwestern Minnesota, especially at night, all the roads look the same. Long, straight roads through flat farmland. Very few landmarks. Many intersections that look identical. Easy to get turned around and not realize it. Brandon had made wrong turns. At some point during his drive, Brandon had taken wrong turns. He thought he was heading toward Marshall, but he'd actually driven in a different direction. By the time he went into the ditch, he was far from where he thought he was. The phone call, trying to find each other. For 47 minutes, Brandon and his father tried to find each other. Brian's actions. Brian got in his car and drove toward where Brandon said he was. He drove to the area between Lind and Marshall. He drove up and down roads, looking for Brandon's car. He honked his horn so Brandon could hear him. He flashed his lights so Brandon could see him. Brandon's actions. Brandon stayed on the phone with his father. He was looking for his father's car. He said he could see the lights of Lind in the distance. He said he'd start walking toward the lights to meet his father halfway. He left his car and started walking. Around 2 a.m. or shortly after, Brandon decided to start walking. Brandon's reasoning. He was frustrated that his father couldn't find him. He thought if he walked toward the lights of Lind, he'd meet his father. He could stay on the phone and guide his father to him. It seemed like a reasonable plan. What Brandon did, he left his car in the ditch. He started walking. He stayed on the phone with his father the entire time. He was walking through fields and along roads. He was describing what he saw to help his father find him. For about 20 minutes, Brandon walked while talking to his father. What Brandon reported. He was walking toward lights he thought were Lind. He was walking through fields. It was very dark. He was having to navigate obstacles. He mentioned fences, fields. He continued describing his surroundings to his father. Brian's perspective. Brian was still driving around the area where Brandon said he was. He still couldn't find Brandon. He was getting frustrated and confused. He asked Brandon repeatedly, "Are you sure you're where you think you are?" The confusion. Brandon insisted he was near Lind, but Brian couldn't find him anywhere near Lind. Something was wrong. They were not in the same area at all. Around 2:30 a.m., Brandon mentioned hearing running water. Brandon's words, "I hear water running. I think I'm near the river." This was significant because it gave a landmark. There are rivers and creeks in the area. But which water? There are multiple water sources in the region. Without knowing Brandon's exact location, it was hard to know which water he meant. Brandon kept walking, still on the phone. He sounded tired, but okay. He was still trying to reach the lights. He was still trying to figure out where he was. He was getting frustrated. After 47 minutes on the phone, this is what happened. Brandon's last words. Brandon was still walking. He was still talking to his father. Then suddenly, Brandon, "Oh shit." And then the line went dead. The call disconnected. Brian's immediate reaction. Brian heard Brandon exclaim, "Oh shit." Then silence. The call ended. Brian immediately called back. No answer. He called again. No answer. Again and again. No answer. Brandon's phone went straight to voicemail. What did "oh shit" mean? This is the central mystery. What did Brandon see or experience that made him say "oh shit" and then go silent? Possibilities. Did he fall? Did he see someone or something? Did he encounter danger? Did he step into water? Did something attack him? Animal? Did he fall into something, pit water? From 2:47 a.m. onward, Brandon's phone never came back online. He never answered calls. He never called back. He was never heard from again. Brian Swanson spent the next hours driving around, calling Brandon's phone, searching desperately. But Brandon was gone, and he's never been seen or heard from since. Let's examine that critical 47-minute phone call in detail, because it's the key to understanding this case. The call timeline, 1:54 a.m. to 2:47 a.m. This phone call is documented through cell phone records, Brian Swanson's testimony, later analysis by investigators. The critical mistake, where Brandon actually was. Here's the shocking truth that was discovered later. Where Brandon thought he was. On the road between Lind and Marshall, about 10 miles from his parents' home. Close to Lind, could see the town's lights. Where Brandon actually was. Near Taunton, Minnesota, a tiny town northeast of Marshall. About 25 miles from where he thought he was. In the completely opposite direction from where he told his father. Nowhere near Lind. How do we know this? After Brandon disappeared, investigators used cell phone records. Cell tower data. Brandon's phone pinged off cell towers. The towers pinged were near Taunton, not Lind. This definitively showed Brandon was nowhere near where he thought he was. The car discovery. Later, Brandon's car was found in a ditch near Porter, Minnesota. Porter is close to Taunton. This confirmed Brandon was in a completely different area. How did Brandon get so lost? This is easier to understand than you might think. The wrong turns. Brandon left the party in Lind. He intended to drive to Marshall, but at some point he took wrong turns. In rural Minnesota at night, with all roads looking similar, this is very easy to do. He drove for a while, thinking he was going the right direction. He wasn't. The lights Brandon saw. Brandon said he could see the lights of Lind, but he wasn't near Lind. What lights was he seeing? Possibly Porter or Taunton. Possibly farmhouses or farm lights. Possibly distant town lights from a different direction. He assumed the lights were Lind because that's where he thought he was. The psychological factor. Once Brandon believed he was near Lind, his brain interpreted everything through that lens. He saw lights, must be Lind. He saw landmarks, must be near Lind. This is called confirmation bias. Our brains see what we expect to see. Why this matters? The fact that Brandon was 25 miles from where he thought he was means. Brian was searching the wrong area. Brian was driving around Lind and Marshall. Brandon was nowhere near there. They could never find each other because they weren't even in the same area. Brandon was walking the wrong direction. Brandon walked toward lights he thought were Lind. He was actually walking toward Porter or Taunton or into open farmland. He was walking away from help, not toward it. The search area was wrong initially. When Brandon first disappeared, searchers looked near Lind. They wasted precious time searching the wrong area. By the time they realized Brandon was near Taunton, the trail was cold. During the 47-minute call, Brandon and Brian talked about describing surroundings. Brandon tried to describe what he saw: fields, roads, lights in the distance. But everything he described was consistent with anywhere in rural Minnesota. There were no unique landmarks. Frustration. Both Brandon and Brian were getting frustrated. Where are you? I'm where I told you. I can't find you. The walking decision. Brandon decided to start walking. He thought this would help. He'd meet his father halfway. This decision may have sealed his fate. Around 2:30 a.m., Brandon said he heard running water. Significance. There are rivers and creeks in the area where Brandon actually was. The Yellow Medicine River runs through the region. There are also drainage ditches and streams. Theories about the water. Some believe Brandon may have fallen into water. The Yellow Medicine River or another water body could have been deeper than expected. In the dark, Brandon might not have seen the water until it was too late. The final minute, what happened? At approximately 2:47 a.m., Brandon said, "Oh shit," and the line went dead. Theories about what happened. Theory 1. Brandon fell into water. He was walking in the dark. He heard water, so he knew he was near it. He may have stepped into a river, creek, or deep ditch. "Oh shit," was his reaction to falling. The phone may have gotten wet and died. Brandon may have drowned or been swept away. Theory 2. Brandon fell into a pit or hole. Rural farmland can have old wells, pits, or holes. In the dark, Brandon might not have seen one. He fell in. "Oh shit," was his reaction. He may have been injured or trapped. Theory 3. Brandon encountered someone. He saw someone or something that alarmed him. "Oh shit," was his reaction to seeing danger. He was attacked or abducted. The phone was destroyed or turned off. Theory 4. Brandon had a medical emergency. Sudden heart attack, stroke, seizure. "Oh shit," was his reaction to feeling something wrong. He collapsed. The phone fell and broke or died. Theory 5. Brandon fell and was injured. He tripped, fell down an embankment, or fell into something. "Oh shit," was his reaction to falling. He was injured and unable to call for help. He may have died from exposure or injuries. Why the phone died? Brandon's phone never came back online after 2:47 a.m. Possible reasons. Battery died, though it had been working for 47 minutes. Phone got wet or damaged. Phone was destroyed. Phone was turned off by Brandon or someone else. Cell tower data. The last ping for Brandon's phone was from towers near Taunton. After 2:47 a.m., no more pings. The phone was either dead, destroyed, or turned off. Brian's nightmare. Imagine being Brian Swanson. You're on the phone with your son for 47 minutes. He's lost, but he's okay. He's talking to you. You're trying to find him. Then suddenly he says, "Oh shit," and the line goes dead. You call back, nothing. You call again, nothing. Your son has vanished and you can't reach him. Brian spent the rest of that night and early morning driving around, calling Brandon's phone, searching desperately. By sunrise, Brandon Swanson had been missing for hours, and the nightmare was just beginning. Okay, we need to pause for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you next is going to be incredibly frustrating and heartbreaking. But before we continue, I need to make sure this video reaches as many people as possible. Brandon Swanson's case needs to be solved. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Here's why it matters. The Swanson family has spent 16 years searching for Brandon. They've organized massive search efforts. They've worked with law enforcement. They've never given up, and they need help. When you subscribe to Untold Cold Cases Files, you're amplifying cases like Brandon's. You're helping families get the attention their cases deserve. You're being part of the solution. Hit that like button if you haven't already. This video needs to reach people in Minnesota. It needs to reach people who were in that area in 2008. It needs to reach landowners, farmers, hunters, anyone who might have seen something or might search their property. You're like pushes this video to more people. More people means a better chance of solving this case. And share this video. Right now, post it in Minnesota groups. Send it to anyone who might have connections to rural Minnesota. Share it on every platform. Brandon Swanson's family deserves answers, and you can help them get those answers. Okay, let's continue with what happened after Brandon vanished. When Brandon didn't come home and didn't answer his phone, his parents knew something was terribly wrong. The morning of May 14th, 2008. By sunrise, Brian and Annette Swanson were frantic. Brandon had been missing for several hours. His phone was off. He was nowhere to be found. The Swansons contacted law enforcement to report Brandon missing. The problem? Brandon was 19 years old, an adult. He'd only been out of contact for a few hours. Police initially suggested he might have gone somewhere with friends, be sleeping off a hangover, etc. There was reluctance to immediately launch a massive search. The Swansons' frustration. Brian and Annette knew something was wrong. This wasn't like Brandon. He'd been on the phone with his father when he vanished. He was in trouble. They were sure of it. But the police response was initially limited due to policies about missing adults. This would later lead to Brandon's law. Brandon's case exposed a major flaw in Minnesota's missing persons policies. Adults weren't taken as seriously as children. There were waiting periods before full investigations. Resources weren't deployed immediately. Brandon's parents would later successfully advocate for Brandon's law, which eliminated the waiting period for reporting missing adults in Minnesota. By mid-morning on May 14th, searches began. Where to search? Initially, searchers looked near Lind and Marshall. This is where Brandon said he was. But Brandon wasn't there. He was 25 miles away near Taunton. The car discovery. Brandon's car was found later that day in a ditch near Porter, Minnesota. This confirmed Brandon was nowhere near where he thought he was. The search area shifted to near Porter/Taunton. What was found in the car? Brandon's car was stuck in a ditch, as he described. His keys were gone. He had them with him. Nothing seemed disturbed. No signs of struggle or violence. The car was just stuck, that's all. Over the following days, weeks, and months, massive searches were conducted. Search methods. Ground searches with hundreds of volunteers. Search dogs, cadaver dogs, and tracking dogs. Helicopters with thermal imaging. Dive teams searched waterways. ATVs and vehicles covered rural roads. Horseback searchers. Drone searches in later years. Area covered. Hundreds of square miles of rural farmland. Fields, ditches, rivers, creeks. Abandoned buildings and structures. Wells, pits, and other potential hazards. What was found? Nothing. Not a single trace of Brandon. No clothing. No phone. No body. No belongings. Nothing. The area where Brandon disappeared is incredibly challenging. Rural farmland. Vast, open areas. Crops grow and are harvested. Potential evidence could be buried or destroyed. Private property. Can't search without permission. Many areas not easily accessible. Water sources. Rivers, creeks, drainage ditches. Water levels change with seasons. Bodies can be swept away or buried in sediment. Searching water thoroughly is difficult. Search dogs were used extensively. Results: dogs tracked Brandon's scent from his car. They followed a trail for a distance. But then the trail went cold. Dogs couldn't find where Brandon went after a certain point. What this might mean: Brandon walked a certain distance, then something happened. He either got into a vehicle, fell into water, which would end the scent trail, or the trail was just too old to follow. Several strange details emerged. Detail number 1: the lights Brandon saw. Brandon said he could see lights he thought were Lind, but he was 25 miles away. What lights was he seeing? Possibilities: Porter or Taunton, small towns, would have some lights. Farm lights. Lights from distant towns in different directions. Detail number 2: Brandon's route. How did Brandon end up so far from where he thought he was? Reconstruction. Brandon left Lind heading toward Marshall. He likely took Highway 68, but at some point, he took a wrong turn. He may have gotten on a Highway 23 or other roads heading northeast. He drove for miles, not realizing he was going the wrong way. Detail number 3: why didn't Brandon just use GPS? In 2008, smartphones weren't as common. Many phones didn't have GPS navigation. Brandon's phone may not have had mapping capabilities, or he may not have thought to use it. Detail number 4: the oh shit. What made Brandon say, oh shit? Analysis. It was sudden. Something unexpected happened. It was serious enough to make him exclaim. It was immediate. Whatever happened, happened right then. The call cut off immediately after. Detail number 5: no other witnesses. Despite walking for 20-plus minutes and being on the phone, no one else saw Brandon that night. No cars passed him, or if they did, didn't report it. No one heard him calling out. He was completely alone in rural farmland. His body was swept away by the current. Evidence supporting this theory: Brandon heard running water. Around 2:30 a.m., Brandon mentioned hearing water. This means he was near a water source. The Yellow Medicine River runs through the area. Oh shit, Kamini fell. Sudden realization: he stepped into water. The phone got wet and died immediately. Brandon was swept away or pulled under. Rural Minnesota water hazards. Rivers can be deceptively deep. Banks can be unstable, especially in the dark. Spring runoff, May, means higher water levels. Strong currents can sweep someone away quickly. Why he hasn't been found. Bodies in rivers can travel miles downstream. They can get caught in debris and submerged. After 16 years, remains would be significantly decomposed and hard to identify. Scattered by animals, buried in sediment. Evidence against this theory: extensive water searches. The Yellow Medicine River has been searched many times. Dive teams, sonar, dragging operations. Downstream areas checked. Nothing found. Brandon was only 5 feet 6 inches and 120 pounds. Small stature means he could potentially have gotten out if the water wasn't too deep/fast. Though panic and cold water impair ability to survive. The phone kept working initially. If Brandon fell in water, the phone should have died immediately. But the call disconnected cleanly, suggesting he either hung up or something else happened. Likelihood: medium to high. Many investigators consider this the most likely scenario, though the lack of remains is puzzling. Theory 2: Brandon fell into a well, pit, or abandoned structure. Rural Minnesota has old wells, abandoned drainage systems, pits, and other hazards. Brandon walked into one in the dark and fell. He was injured or killed, and his body remains hidden in the structure. Evidence supporting this theory: rural hazards. Old farms have abandoned wells. Some are partially covered and hard to see. Drainage culverts and pits exist. In the dark, Brandon wouldn't have seen these hazards. Oh shit, makes sense. Evidence against this theory: Search scope. Massive searches covered huge areas. If Brandon died of exposure in the open, he should have been found. Timeline. The searches began within hours. A body in the open should have been found relatively quickly. 16 years is a long time, but initial searches were thorough. Likelihood, medium. Possible, especially if Brandon ended up in an area that wasn't thoroughly searched or where remains were scattered. Theory 4. Foul play. Brandon encountered someone. Brandon encountered someone while walking, another person, possibly with bad intentions. He was attacked, abducted, or killed. His body was hidden or disposed of. Evidence supporting this theory. Oh shit, he saw someone. Sudden realization, someone was there. Fear reaction. The person attacked him or grabbed him. The phone was destroyed or taken. Rural Minnesota, not as isolated as it seems. There are people who live and work in rural areas. Someone could have been out that night. Brandon could have crossed paths with someone. Location changed. If someone took Brandon, they could have transported his body anywhere. This would explain why no remains have been found in the search area. Evidence against this theory. No evidence of another person. No witnesses reported seeing anyone else in the area. No vehicles reported. No suspicious activity noted. Motive. What would be the motive for harming Brandon? Random violence is relatively rare in rural Minnesota. Why target a young man walking alone? The phone call. Brandon was on the phone with his father for 47 minutes. He never mentioned seeing anyone. He never sounded scared of another person. His only concern was being lost. Probability. While not impossible, foul play seems less likely than accident. There's no evidence pointing to another person's involvement. Likelihood. Low. Possible, but unsupported by evidence. Most investigators don't believe foul play was involved. Theory 5. Animal attack. The hypothesis. Brandon encountered a dangerous animal, coyotes, dog, etc., that attacked him. Evidence supporting this theory. Rural wildlife. Coyotes exist in rural Minnesota. Aggressive dogs could be present on farms. Oh shit could be a reaction to seeing an animal. Evidence against this theory. Minnesota wildlife. Coyotes rarely attack adult humans. There are no bears, wolves, or large predators in this area. Most dangerous animal will be farm dogs. No evidence. No reports of aggressive animals in the area. Animal attacks typically leave evidence, blood, torn clothing, signs of struggle. Likelihood, very low, highly unlikely. Animal attacks on adult humans are extremely rare in Minnesota. Theory 6. Voluntary disappearance. Brandon staged his disappearance. He wanted to start a new life and used the car accident and phone call as cover. Evidence supporting this theory. No body found. After 16 years, no remains discovered. Maybe that's because Brandon is alive somewhere. Evidence against this theory. Completely out of character. Brandon had no reason to run away. Good relationship with family. Doing well in school. Had a girlfriend and friends. No problems in his life. The phone call. Brandon sounded genuinely lost and frustrated. He was trying to find his father to get help. This doesn't fit with someone planning to disappear. No preocupación. Brandon took nothing with him. No money, no extra clothes. Just left his car and walked into the night. How would he start a new life with no resources? No sightings. 16 years later, no credible sightings. Brandon hasn't accessed bank accounts, used his social security number, or left any trace. Likelihood, extremely low. Almost everyone rejects this theory. Brandon had no reason to disappear voluntarily. Theory 7. Brandon succumbed to alcohol/exhaustion. Brandon had been drinking. Combined with exhaustion from walking, stress, and possibly hypothermia, he became disoriented, collapsed, and died. His body is in a location not yet found. Evidence supporting this theory. Alcohol impairment. Brandon had been drinking at the party. Alcohol impairs judgment, coordination, temperature regulation. Combined with stress and walking in the dark, this could be dangerous. Physical exhaustion. Brandon walked for at least 20 minutes, probably longer, through fields, over fences, in the dark, while frustrated and stressed. This is physically and mentally exhausting. Disorientation. Already lost, Brandon may have become more disoriented, could have wandered in circles, eventually collapsed from exhaustion. Evidence against this theory. Brandon sounded coherent. During the 47-minute phone call, Brandon sounded frustrated but coherent. He was communicating clearly. He didn't sound drunk or incoherent. Timeline. Brandon had been at the party for hours. Alcohol would have been metabolizing. By 2 a.m., when he was walking, some effects may have worn off. Likelihood. Low to medium. Alcohol may have been a contributing factor, but Brandon didn't seem severely impaired. Most likely scenario. Based on the evidence, most investigators believe Brandon Swanson was walking through rural farmland in the dark, disoriented and lost. He was near the Yellow Medicine River or another water source. He either stepped into the water unexpectedly, was swept away by the current, and drowned. His remains were carried downstream and have not been recovered, or fell into an unknown hazard, well, pit, culvert, and his body remains hidden in that location, or collapsed from a combination of exhaustion, cold, and possibly injury. His remains are in a remote area that hasn't been adequately searched or where remains were scattered/buried over time. Oh shit, was Brandon's reaction to whatever happened, falling, stepping into water, or realizing he was in danger? The lack of remains after 16 years is explained by the vast, rural search area, decomposition and scattering by animals, remains being in water, buried, or hidden in an unknown location. The challenges of searching hundreds of square miles of farmland. What we can say with confidence, Brandon did not plan to disappear. He was genuinely lost and trying to get help. Something unexpected happened at 2:47 a.m. that ended his life or made him unable to call for help. His remains are somewhere in rural Minnesota, waiting to be found. It's been over 16 years since Brandon Swanson disappeared. In that time, his case has become one of Minnesota's most well-known unsolved mysteries. The Swanson family's search. Brian and Annette Swanson have never given up. What they've done, organized massive volunteer search efforts year after year, worked tirelessly with law enforcement, maintained a website and social media presence, appeared on national TV, disappeared, 2020 Unsolved Mysteries, offered rewards for information, kept Brandon's case in the public eye, advocated for policy changes. Their dedication. For 16 years, they've searched. Every spring, they organize searches. They've spent countless hours walking fields. They've investigated every tip. They've never stopped believing they'll find Brandon. The emotional toll, the not knowing, is torture. Every day without answers is agony. But they refuse to give up. Brandon's Law. One positive outcome from this tragedy is Brandon's Law, the problem it addressed. Before Brandon's case, Minnesota law enforcement could delay investigating missing adults. There were waiting periods. Resources weren't immediately deployed. Brandon's case showed how dangerous these delays could be. Brandon's Law, signed into law in Minnesota in 2009, eliminates the waiting period for missing adults, requires immediate investigation when certain criteria are met, allows for faster deployment of resources, has helped other families get quicker responses. National impact. Brandon's Law inspired similar laws in other states. It's become a model for missing persons policies. Brandon's legacy is saving others through this legislation. Where the case stands today, 2024. As of 2024, 16 years after Brandon's disappearance. Official status. The case remains open and active. Lincoln County Sheriff's Office continues to investigate. Tips are still followed up. Searches continue periodically. Recent developments. New technology, drones, improved ground-penetrating radar has been used. Some areas have been researched with better equipment. Social media keeps the case alive. Regular anniversaries bring renewed attention. The reality. After 16 years, finding remains becomes more challenging. Decomposition is complete. Evidence has degraded. But hope remains. What would help solve the case? Discovery of remains. The most likely resolution is someone finding remains. A farmer, hunter, hiker, or landowner discovering evidence. This is why continued searches matter. New witnesses. Someone who was in the area that night coming forward. Someone who saw something but didn't realize it was important. Technology. Better search technology. New methods for searching large areas. Improved water search capabilities. Lessons from Brandon's case. 1. GPS and technology. Always use GPS when driving, especially in unfamiliar areas. Share your location with family/friends. Have backup navigation methods. 2. Stay with your vehicle. If you're in an accident and not injured, stay with your vehicle. It's easier to find a car than a person. Your car provides shelter. 3. Call 911. Even if you've been drinking, call 911 for help. Your safety is more important than a DUI. Police and emergency services are there to help. 4. Trust technology over instincts. Brandon thought he knew where he was. He was wrong. In rural areas especially, use GPS, not assumptions. What looks right can be deceptive. 5. Immediate response matters. Brandon's law exists because delayed response can be deadly. If someone is missing, report it immediately. Don't wait. The enduring mystery. What makes Brandon's case so haunting is how documented it is. We know exactly where he was, roughly. We have a 47-minute phone call documenting his movements. We know the moment he vanished. We have massive search efforts. And yet, despite all of this information, Brandon Swanson vanished completely. Where is Brandon Swanson? Somewhere in rural southwestern Minnesota. In a field, in a river, in a hidden structure, in an area not yet searched thoroughly. Brandon's remains are out there. They're waiting to be found. A message to Brandon. If by some impossible miracle, Brandon is alive somewhere. Brandon, your family has been searching for you for 16 years. Your parents have never given up. They love you. They want you home. If you're alive, if you can come forward, please do. A message to anyone with information. If you were in southwestern Minnesota on May 14th, 2008, if you own land in that area, if you've seen anything unusual in fields, ditches, or remote areas, if you know anything, please contact Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, 507-694-1664. Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, 651-793-7000. FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI. FindBrandon.com. A reward is offered for information leading to finding Brandon. To landowners in the area. If you own property in southwestern Minnesota, near Porter, Taunton, or the Yellow Medicine River, search your land. Check old wells, structures, ditches. Look for anything unusual. You might be the one who finds Brandon. Brandon Swanson was 19 years old when he disappeared. He was driving home from party. He got lost. He called his parents for help. And then, in the middle of trying to find his way home, he vanished. For 16 years, his family has lived with the agony of not knowing. They've searched. They've hoped. They've prayed. But they've never gotten answers. Brandon deserves to be found. His family deserves closure. And somewhere in Minnesota, the answer is waiting. Maybe someone watching this video will be the one who finds it. For Brandon. For Brian and Annette, who have searched for 16 years. For every family dealing with a missing loved one. The search continues. The case remains open. And the question remains, where is Brandon Swanson? Before we close this investigation, I need to talk to you about something really important. Brandon Swanson's case can be solved. His remains are out there, and you might be the person who helps find them. Here's what I need you to do. Action number 1. Subscribe to Untold Cold Cases Files right now. Click that subscribe button. Here's why it matters. The Swanson family has spent 16 years searching for their son. They've organized searches, worked with investigators, kept media attention on the case. But they need help. When this channel grows, we can cover more missing persons cases, reach more people who might have information, put pressure on cold cases that need attention, partner with families and investigators, make a real difference. Every subscriber helps. Subscribe right now. Action number 2. Like this video. Hit that like button. When this video gets enough engagement, YouTube shows it to people in Minnesota, people interested in missing persons, people who own rural land, people who might have been in that area in 2008. You're like, could get this video in front of someone who has information. Do it right now. Action number 3. Share this video. Here's exactly how. This is the most important action. Don't just think about sharing it. Actually do it right now. On Facebook, share to your timeline. Brandon Swanson vanished in rural Minnesota in 2008 while on the phone with his father. His case has never been solved. If you're from Minnesota or know anyone who is, please watch and share. Post in Minnesota community groups. Post in missing persons groups. Post in true crime groups. On Reddit. Unsolved mysteries. True crime. Minnesota. Missing 411. Any Minnesota local subreddits. On Twitter/X. Tweet with hashtags. Hashtag Brandon Swanson, hashtag Minnesota, hashtag missing person, hashtag cold case, hashtag find Brandon. Tak at MNDPS_BCA at FBI. Via text/email. Know someone from Minnesota? Send them this video. Know farmers or landowners? Send them this video. Know anyone who travels through rural Minnesota? Send them this video. Action number 4. Specific calls to action. If you own land in southwestern Minnesota, specifically near Porter, Taunton, Canby, Marshall, or along the Yellow Medicine River, search your property. Check old wells and structures. Walk your fields, especially less traveled areas. Check ditches, low-lying areas near water. Look for anything unusual. You might be the one who finds Brandon. If you were in that area on May 14th, 2008, even if you don't think you saw anything relevant, did you see a young man walking? Did you see a car in a ditch? Did you see anything unusual? Contact authorities. Let them decide if it's important. If you're a hunter, hiker, or outdoor enthusiast in Minnesota, keep Brandon's face in your mind. If you're in rural areas, stay alert. Look for anything that seems out of place. Check remote areas. If you work in search and rescue or have relevant expertise, contact the Swanson family or Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Offer your skills. Suggest new search methods. Volunteer for organized searches. Action number 5. Long-term commitment. Don't just watch this video and forget about Brandon tomorrow. This month, visit findbrandon.com weekly for updates. Share this video again in a few weeks to reach new people. Keep Brandon's case in your mind. This year, if you travel through Minnesota, remember Brandon. Share this video on the anniversary of his disappearance, May 14th. Stay engaged with the case. Long term, never forget Brandon Swanson. If you're ever in rural Minnesota, keep an eye out. Support the Swanson family's continued efforts. The power you have. Right now, you're watching this video. You might think, what can I do? Here's the answer. You could be the person who solves this case. Here's how. You share this video. Someone in your network sees it. They share it. A farmer in Minnesota sees it. They search their property. They find remains. Brandon is finally brought home. Or you share this video. Someone who was in that area in 2008 sees it. They remember something they saw. They contact authorities. It provides the clue that solves the case. It starts with you sharing this video. Brandon Swanson was 19 years old. He was the same age as many college students watching this video. He was driving home from a party, something millions of young people do every year. His life didn't end because he made terrible choices. It ended because he made one wrong turn, got lost, and walked into the darkness. It could have been anyone. It could have been you. Brandon's family has lived 16 years without answers. 16 years of searching. 16 years of hoping. 16 years of agony. Will you help them? Will you subscribe so we can keep telling these stories? Will you like this video so it reaches more people? Will you share this video so someone with information might see it? I believe you will. Now, prove it with action. What's next on Untold Cold Cases Files? Next, the mysterious case of a college student who vanished from her dorm room. Her belongings were packed. The door was locked from the inside, and she was simply gone. No witnesses, no evidence, no explanation. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for spending the last 40 minutes learning about Brandon Swanson. Thank you for caring about a young man who got lost, called his dad for help, and never came home. But most importantly, thank you for taking action. This is Untold Cold Cases Files, where every missing person matters, every case deserves justice, and every family deserves answers. For Brandon, for Brian and Annette who have searched for 16 years, for every person who's ever been lost and couldn't find their way home. Brandon Swanson is out there somewhere, and we're not giving up until we find him. Thank you. Now, go share this video. Let's bring Brandon home.